The departure deck's quarters were smaller than a storage closet, which was fitting, since he'd spent 6 years treating himself like spare equipment. A narrow bunk, a locker, a desk that folded down from the wall. Everything regulation, everything temporary. He'd never bothered to personalize the space because personalizing meant admitting he lived here, and living somewhere meant it mattered. Now, standing in the doorway at 5:47 hours, he realized he'd been right all along. It didn't matter. He grabbed his duffel from the locker, the same one he'd carried when he first arrived at Starbase 447. Back then, it had held everything he owned. 6 years later, it still did. 3 changes of clothes, a data slate with technical manuals he'd never needed because he knew the station's systems better than the manuals did. A photo of his parents he hadn't looked at in 2 years. He stared at the photo now, his mother's smile frozen in time, his father's hand on her shoulder. They died in a transport accident when he was 19. He joined the station crew 3 months later, looking for somewhere to disappear. He tucked the photo into his jacket pocket and sealed the duffel. The corridor outside was in the dead hour between night and day shifts, lit by emergency strips that cast everything in pale blue. Dex walked toward the lift, his footsteps echoing in a way they never had before. For 6 years, he'd moved through these passages like a ghost, deliberately forgettable. Now, every step felt like an announcement. The lift descended to level 4, where the crew quarters gave way to commercial sections. Shops, restaurants, the kind of places where people who weren't hiding went to pretend the station was more than a military installation wrapped in steel. Dex had been here maybe twice in 6 years, both times to fix malfunctioning air recyclers in the back rooms. He found the place Garrett had mentioned once, months ago. The Orbit's Edge, a cafe that served real coffee imported from Earth at prices that made maintenance workers laugh. Garrett had called it pretentious. Dex had called it a waste of credits. But Garrett came here anyway, once a week, because his wife had loved coffee, and this was the closest he could get to the blend she'd made every morning before she died. Garrett was sitting in a corner booth, a cup steaming in front of him. He looked up when Dex approached, and his weathered face shifted through confusion, concern, and something harder to name. "You look like hell," Garrett said. "Didn't sleep. I noticed you didn't show up for shift." Garrett gestured to the seat across from him. "Got a message from command asking about your whereabouts. Told them you'd probably caught whatever bug was going around medical. Bought you 12 hours before they check again." Dex sat down, setting his duffel beside him. The cafe was nearly empty. A Vexian engineer reading technical journals at the counter, a human couple speaking in low tones by the window. Normal people, living normal lives while the galaxy teetered on the edge of war they didn't know was coming. "I'm leaving," Dex said. "Leaving the station? Leaving everything." Dex met Garrett's eyes. "I can't tell you where or why. I can't tell you when I'll be back, but I needed to say goodbye." Garrett was quiet for a long moment, his hands wrapped around the coffee cup. Then he said, "This have anything to do with Admiral Strand?" "How did you—" "Dex, I've been doing this job for 32 years. I know when someone's been recruited for something off the books." Garrett's voice was low, careful. "Saw it happen twice before. Good people pulled into operations they couldn't talk about. One came back, one didn't." Dex felt something cold settle in his chest. "I don't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. Question is whether you can live with it." Garrett took a sip of his coffee, grimaced. "Never tastes like hers did. Don't know if it's the blend or just that nothing tastes right when you're drinking it alone." "Garrett, you're a good kid, Dex. Better than you think you are." Garrett set down his cup. 6 years you've been invisible, and I let you be because I figured you needed it. But I always knew you wouldn't stay that way forever. People like you. You're either running from something or running toward it. Time comes when you have to pick which one it is. I'm not running." "No, you're not." Garrett reached across the table and gripped Dex's shoulder. "So you make sure you come back. Station's going to need people like you when whatever's coming gets here. And I need someone to complain about regulations with." Dex felt his throat tighten. He'd spent 6 years keeping everyone at arm's length, and somehow Garrett had seen through it anyway. "I'll do my best. That's all anyone can ask." Garrett released his shoulder and leaned back. Now get out of here before I start getting sentimental. And Dex, whatever you're doing, whatever Strand pulled you into, you trust your gut. It's kept you alive this long. Dex stood, grabbed his duffel, and walked out of the orbit's edge without looking back. If he looked back, he might not leave. Bay 14 was in the military section, which meant checkpoints and security scanners and Marines who looked at everyone like potential threats. Dex used his command override chip to pass through the first checkpoint, watching the guard's expression shift from bored routine to alert confusion when the system flagged him as command authorized. Maintenance worker with Admiral clearance, the guard muttered, scanning Dex's credentials 3 times. That's a first. Special assignment, Dex said, keeping his voice flat. The guard waved him through, but Dex felt eyes on him the whole way down the corridor. Command clearance meant someone important wanted him somewhere, which meant people noticed. He'd have to get used to that. Bay 14 was smaller than the main docking ports, designed for priority vessels and covert operations. The Nightingale sat on the pad like a predator at rest, sleek, dark, built for speed rather than comfort. A modified courier ship, Strand had called it. Dex could see the modifications: reinforced hull plating, military-grade sensor arrays, weapon hardpoints that would be invisible to casual inspection. This wasn't a diplomatic transport. This was a ship built to go places others couldn't and come back alive. Elara was already there, standing beside a cargo container and talking to someone who definitely wasn't human. The Lumineth guide stood 2 meters tall, her form composed entirely of shifting light that pulsed with colors Dex didn't have names for. She was vaguely humanoid, 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, but the details kept changing, as if her body was a suggestion rather than a fixed state. When she moved, she left after images in the air, trails of light that faded slowly. Dex, Elara said as he approached. This is resonance of distant stars. She'll be navigating us through the Dead Zone. The Lumineth turned toward him, and Dex felt something like pressure in his mind. Not invasive, but present, as if she was reading the surface of his thoughts. When she spoke, her voice came from everywhere and nowhere, a harmonic that bypassed his ears and resonated directly in his skull. You are the one who carries the ancient echo, Resonance said. The matriarch spoke truth. You will be tested. Dex swallowed. I'm ready. No one is ready for what waits in Kethara, but you will endure or you will not. The Crucible cares nothing for readiness. Reassuring, Elara muttered. Resonance shifted her attention to Elara. You carry guilt that is not yours to bear. The Korvathi incident was orchestrated. Your translation was correct. The contamination was in the data itself. Elara went very still. What? The conspiracy you hunt has roots deeper than you know. They have been manipulating events for longer than your species has traveled the stars. Korvathi was one thread in a pattern that spans civilizations. Resonance's form pulsed with something that might have been sympathy. You could not have prevented it. No one could have, because the outcome was designed before you arrived. Dex watched Elara's face, saw the emotions warring there. Relief, anger, grief, fury. She'd been carrying that guilt for years, and now she was learning it had been weaponized against her. Who? Elara's voice was barely above a whisper. Who designed it? The same entity that seeks the Crucible, the same force that has orchestrated 17 cycles of rise and fall. But that is a truth for later. Now, we must depart. Resonance turned toward the Nightingale. Admiral Strand approaches. Dex heard footsteps and turned to see Strand walking across the bay, his uniform crisp despite the early hour. He looked older in the harsh bay lighting, the lines around his eyes deeper, but his bearing was as straight as ever. The fleet is in chaos, Strand said without preamble. Admiral Chen opened fire on a Krytherium civilian convoy 20 minutes ago. 53 confirmed dead. The swarm is mobilizing their war fleets. We have maybe 48 hours before this becomes a shooting war across 3 sectors. Dex felt his stomach drop. Can you stop it? I'm trying. But Chen has evidence, fabricated evidence that the convoy was carrying weapons. The Krytherium are saying it was a peaceful transport. No one knows who to believe, which means everyone's preparing for the worst. Strand looked at each of them in turn. You 3 need to reach the Crucible before the conspiracy does. If they activate it with the galaxy already at war, the death toll will be enough to power it fully. Everything we've done will be for nothing. What about the arrests? Elara asked. The conspirators on the station? 17 in custody. None of them are talking. They're true believers, convinced they're saving humanity by establishing dominance over the other species. Strand's expression was grim. But they're not the leadership. They're foot soldiers. The real architects are still out there, and they know we're coming. Resonance's form brightened. Then we must move swiftly. The dead zone will hide us from their sensors, but only if we enter before they establish a perimeter. Strand handed Dex a data chip. Everything I know about the conspiracy, every name, every connection. If something happens to me, make sure it gets to someone who can use it. The Galactic Assembly needs to know how deep this goes. Nothing's going to happen to you, Dex said. Maybe not, but I'm about to arrest an admiral and court-martial half my officer corps. People who do that don't usually die of old age. Strand held out his hand. You've become something remarkable, Dex. Don't let the Crucible take that away from you. Dex shook his hand, feeling the weight of everything unsaid. Strand had seen something in him 6 years ago, something Dex was only now beginning to understand. And now he was sending Dex into the most dangerous place in the galaxy to prevent a war that had already started. We'll stop them, Dex said. Strand nodded once, then turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing in the bay. The Nightingale's interior was all function, no comfort. Acceleration couches in the main cabin, a compact cockpit designed for 2 cargo holds that could be converted to living space if needed. Resonance moved through the ship like liquid light, her form adapting to the corridors, checking systems with touches that left glowing marks on the consoles. Navigation crystal is integrated, she said. We can depart when ready. Elara was running pre-flight checks, her hands moving with practiced efficiency. Dex strapped into one of the acceleration couches and stared at the bay through the viewport. Starbase 447 had been his home for 6 years, his prison, his hiding place. Now he was leaving it behind to chase ancient mysteries and stop a war. He thought about Garrett's words, running from something or running toward it. Maybe it was both. The Nightingale's engines powered up with a low hum that vibrated through the deck. Dex felt the ship lift, felt the artificial gravity adjust as they cleared the bay and entered open space. Through the viewport, the station receded, a massive wheel of lights and steel against the black. Jump gate coordinates locked, Elara said from the cockpit. 3-week transit to the Meridian system, then another week to the dead zone, assuming we don't run into any complications. We will, Resonance said, her voice carrying certainty. The conspiracy has resources we cannot predict, and the Crucible itself will test us. It has been waiting for someone worthy for 3 million years. It will not surrender easily. Dex watched the station disappear into the distance and thought about what the matriarch had said. You carry something ancient within you, something the Crucible recognizes. He didn't know what that meant. He didn't know if he wanted to, but he was going to find out. The Nightingale accelerated toward the jump gate, and Dex closed his eyes, letting the vibration of the engines wash over him. Somewhere ahead, in the Dead Zone of Kethara, an ancient device waited. And somewhere behind them, the galaxy was tearing itself apart. All he could do was move forward and hope that when they reached the Crucible, he'd be strong enough to do what needed to be done. Whatever that turned out to be.